In 1980, nearly 40% of private sector workers in America had a pension, a promise from their employer of a guaranteed, predictable income for the rest of their life. Today, that number is less than 10%. The gold watch retirement, the bedrock of security for a generation, has all but vanished. So what happened? How did a promise that defined the American dream disappear? The story involves a post-war boom, a fatal flaw, and a single catastrophic company collapse that changed retirement forever. The modern company pension plan truly came of age in the decades after World War II. The American economy was booming. Powerful unions representing millions of workers negotiated for better benefits as part of their contracts. Simultaneously, with wage and price controls in effect during and after the war, companies looking to attract the best talent couldn't just offer higher pay. Instead, they competed by offering increasingly attractive retirement plans. This gave birth to the golden age of the defined benefit pension. The deal was simple and powerful. You work for our company for 30 or 40 years, and we promise to pay you a specific defined benefit, a fixed monthly income for life, typically calculated based on your final salary and your years of service. For a generation of workers, this was the social contract. You gave a company your loyalty, your entire career, and in return, you got a gold watch and complete peace of mind. You could plan your future with a degree of certainty that is almost unimaginable today. The risk of outliving your savings, or of a stock market crash wiping you out, was not yours to bear. It was the company's. This system was the third leg of the retirement stool, alongside Social Security and personal savings, and for decades it was the strongest leg. But there was a hidden, fatal flaw in this promise. A company's guarantee was only as good as the company itself. What if the company went out of business? That question became a harsh reality in December of 1963, when the Studebaker Automobile Company, a name once as famous as Ford or General Motors, shut down its massive plant in South Bend, Indiana. Thousands of workers lost their jobs just before Christmas, but they soon discovered they had lost something far more devastating: their pensions. The company's pension plan was severely underfunded. There was enough money to continue paying the 3,600 workers who had already retired. But for the roughly 4,000 active workers between the ages of 40 and 59, many with decades of loyal service, the fund was nearly empty. They received only 15 cents for every dollar they had been promised. And for the 2,900 workers under the age of 40, they got nothing. Zero. A lifetime of loyalty erased overnight. The shock and outrage were immense. The Studebaker collapse became a national scandal. It exposed the terrifying vulnerability of millions of workers who believed their futures were secure. It became a rallying cry for reform, a decade-long political battle to put real legal protection behind a pension promise. After years of debate, Congress passed the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, known as ERISA. This landmark law was a monumental achievement for worker protection. ERISA didn't force companies to offer pensions, but if they did, they now had to follow strict federal rules. It established minimum funding standards, so companies couldn't chronically underfund their plans. It created vesting rights, so workers were legally entitled to their benefits after a certain number of years, even if they left the company. And most importantly, it created a government insurance agency, the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation, or PBGC. This agency acts as a federal backstop, guaranteeing a portion of a worker's pension if their company goes bankrupt. It was designed to make sure a Studebaker disaster could never happen again. So if ERISA made pensions safer than ever, why did they suddenly start disappearing? Let me know your theory in the comments. From a corporate finance perspective, a defined benefit pension is a massive and unpredictable long-term liability on a company's balance sheet. A company has to promise to pay a certain amount of money to a worker who might live for 20, 30, or even 40 years after retiring. To fund that promise, they have to make incredibly complex assumptions. How long will their workers live? How much will their salaries grow? How well will the pension fund's investments perform over decades? If they get any of those assumptions wrong, if people live longer than expected, or if the stock market has a bad decade, the company could suddenly be on the hook for billions of dollars in unfunded promises. This is a huge risk that makes investors nervous and can drag down a company's stock price. Because of this risk and the increasing complexity of pension regulations under ERISA, companies began a massive shift away from these plans. They moved to defined contribution plans, a model we all know today as the 401k. The difference is the most important financial story of the last 50 years. In a defined contribution plan, the company's obligation is only to contribute a certain amount to your account today. For example, a 3% match on your savings. The final amount you have at retirement is not defined. It is not guaranteed. It depends entirely on how much you save and, crucially, how well your investments perform in the stock market. This was one of the biggest and quietest financial revolutions of the 20th century. It has been called the Great Risk Shift. The enormous, long-term risk of securing a comfortable retirement was systematically transferred from the broad shoulders of the corporation directly onto the back of the individual worker. Your employer is no longer responsible for guaranteeing your retirement income. You are. You are now the fund manager, the one who has to worry about market volatility, inflation, and the terrifying prospect of outliving your savings. The certainty of the pension was replaced by the uncertainty of the market. ERISA was a huge victory for the workers who still had traditional pensions, providing a vital safety net that protects them to this day. But it had an enormous, unintended consequence. The new, stricter funding rules and the insurance premiums required by the PBGC made defined benefit plans even more expensive and complex for companies to manage. This made the simpler, less risky, and cheaper 401k model look even more attractive. The very law designed to protect the pension system may have, unintentionally, helped accelerate its demise. Then, retirement was a three-legged stool: a strong company pension, Social Security, and personal savings. The pension was the strongest leg, providing a solid foundation of guaranteed income. Now, for most private sector workers, that pension leg is completely gone. The stool now rests on just two legs: Social Security and your own 401k, making it far less stable and putting the entire weight of a secure retirement on your own ability to save and invest wisely. The death of the private sector pension represents a fundamental break in the social contract between companies and their workers. The promise of lifelong loyalty in exchange for lifelong security is gone. It created a more flexible labor market, but it also created a more anxious and uncertain one. It leaves us with a critical question for our time. In an age where we are all our own pension fund managers, are we as individuals truly equipped for that challenge? Follow along for more thought-provoking history at the Human Timeline TV.